Hi guys, so in today's session, we are going to look at outputs in Terraform. And basically what outputs is, in Terraform, you basically have resources, is basically things that you create that could be S3 buckets in AWS or EC2 instances or VPC. And all of these are resources, which we checked in the last time. And then you have data sources and then you have outputs. So outputs is something that, let's say you create an EC2 instance and then you want to get information about this EC2 instance. So you would use output for that. So the last video we created an EC2 instance. So I will just continue on that. And then you go in here and you see this EC2 instance that's running. So I need to get some information about this instance through Terraform. So what I'm going to do is basically just write output and press tab. So when I just type in OU and then press tab, it kind of auto completes for me. So I just press tab and it auto completes. And for now, I'll just keep the name of the output as name. Okay. And then I need to assign a value. So I assign a value to this output and the value could be anything. So for now, I will just keep text just to keep it simple. And what you need to do if you're following this on Visual Studio Code, you just need to go into the extensions and then install this extension, which basically gives you syntax highlighting and auto completion, which is what I'm using, right? So that should make our lives easier. Cool. So now that we have output and the name over here and the value is text, let's see what happens when I plan. Okay, so now it says there's no changes to the infrastructure. And the reason it's doing that is basically because we already have our instance created over here, right? So let's do a Terraform apply. Okay, so when we apply, it says apply no changes to your infrastructure because there is nothing that's new. This is the same configuration which we applied last time. Okay, but what it says over here is outputs. So now it detects this block of code and it says, okay, output called name, which is this, and the value is text. So this basically just shows us that this configuration file is working. And the best practice is to have a separate file over here called output.tf, and then you put all the outputs that you want to create in this file over there. So that's basically how you would set it up. But in our case, I've just kept it in the same file for simplicity. Okay, so now let's look at something more detailed. So this is a resource of type AWS instance, and the name is app server. And I need to get more information about this, right? So I need to print it out on the console, or I need to do pass it to a different module. So what I would do is, first I would keep the name of the output, something that is more intuitive. So let's say, and then since this is about this app server, so info, right? And now in the value, what I want to do is reference the resource that I created at the top. So I basically say aws._instance.app server, and then I just press a tab to complete. And when I press the dot, it gives me all these attributes which are corresponding to this resource. So I can look at the AMI, the ARN, and all this information which is about this EC2 instance. Another way to see the outputs would be to go into the documentation, and so for example, we go into this documentation for the resource called AWS instance, and then just go into the attributes reference, and this is basically going to show you the same thing in the documentation. that you can access all these attributes for this resource, right? So yeah, so I think that's about it. And so let's say that we want to uh, go in and look at the ARN, right? So what I will do right now is apply. Okay, so now you see the value, the output has changed, and then we have the name of the output over here, which is this. And instead of the value, it's dynamically getting it from this resource. So this is the ARN, and the way to verify this is the instance ID, which is basically the at the end of the ARN. So it's 02C0. So what we can do is just go in over here and check that yes, in fact this is the instance that it's referring to. So if I wanted some other details, I could just go over here and look at the AMI or any other details that I want, and I could print this out. Another way to look at the outputs is just type in Terraform outputs, and that should basically print out the output for you. I think it's outputs, sorry. Sorry, I have a typo over here. Okay, so when I do Terraform output, it basically prints out the same information. And if I had 5 or 6 outputs over here, it would print out the information for all of them. So what I can do is basically go in here and just write in example. Okay, and in the value, I just gave in some text. Right? And now let's try to see what happens when we put output. Okay, so what it's doing is just giving us this output because we haven't applied this yet. So let's try to apply this. Okay, so now we have 2 outputs, which is basically app server info, which is this block, and then you have example text, which is this block, right? And so if I was just, and what it does is basically it's reading this output from the state file. So that's the reason it didn't show up earlier. But then when you apply it, it refreshes the state file. So you go to Terraform output, and then it prints out all the outputs that are there. So now if I just want to look at the output for, let's say, this server, and I don't want to look at anything else, so what I could do is just copy this. Okay. So what it's going to do now is, instead of printing out all the outputs, it's just going to print out the output for the one that I have defined, which is this one, app server info, right? And so this is what it has done. And if you go in here 1D00 and you check out the AMI ID for this instance, so we see that yeah, that's the AMI ID that is being used. So that's basically all you need to know about outputs. There is one more option which is sensitive, and this is basically when you don't want to print anything on the console, and you don't want this output to be printed on the console, and that's when you would yeah. So I think what I need to do is apply this. Okay, so yeah, so now the thing is for it to take effect, you have to apply it. And so now that I applied it, it doesn't show this value in the output because it's sensitive. So so why you would want to use this is when you want to pass this output to another module, or pass it between modules, is when you would want to use this. But basically this will prevent it from being printed out on the console. So I hope this helps, and please subscribe for more videos. Thank you.